This is Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jess Nam.
And this is Jamal Dejani.
Jamal, I mean, we've got a great show, by the way. That goes without saying. But we have so much information and so much news to cover today. We may not even have a time to cover all the news that is out there. I mean, we have things from constitutional challenges regarding, Trump's attempts to basically subvert the constitutional processes that we have in this country, to really significant attempts to undermine U.S. strategic interests on the behalf of the Israeli government and AIPAC. There's a lot to cover today. I don't know if we're going to have all the time we need, but let's just dive right in.
Yeah, and, we are going to be talking about the Constitution and BDS and, of course, the most recent bill, which keeps coming up, Jess. This is the fourth time within the past month that a bill has been introduced in Congress.
Not just Congress. Let's be clear about this. This is a Senate bill.
That's right.
Which is even more outrageous in some ways because the way things are going now, it's unclear whether or not something like this could even pass in the Congress. But the Senate seems to, on its fourth try, Jamal, appears to want to subvert, I like that word today, constitutional protections for free speech on behalf of Israel. Now, we should also put it in the context, Jamal, that, we're in the midst of this major, shutdown of the U.S. government. We're confronting significant problems worldwide. The Senate is responsible for covering a lot of things, yet they seem to be preoccupied with attacking our First Amendment rights.
Yeah, I mean, the bill was voted on this Monday, but last week when we were in the midst of a government shutdown, that was the only bill
the Senate was able to get
by Senator Rubio, basically, and we'll talk about the bill, basically, which includes language that would encourage states to pass unconstitutional laws penalizing businesses and individuals who participate in politically motivated, this is according to their language, boycotts against Israel, which basically is targeting the boycott movement. In other words, if institutions or individuals decide, okay, we want to exercise our First Amendment rights and not do business with an Israeli company or even the Israeli government, including the military, you'll be penalized. They'll be penalized, which is against the Constitution. So this bill, sadly, on Monday,
it passed?
It passed the Senate.
So I think the vote, Jamal, was 70 to 19.
Maybe 70 or 72 maybe. But regardless, it needed 60, right? So it needed 60 to pass.
Yeah.
And it passed. Now it has to go to Congress, and then I think we're going to even, if it passes Congress, it's going to go to the Supreme Court. But let's just work within this premise. So, and this is an important key point for our Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment, the right to speech, the right to act, the right to assemble, the right to make up your mind, decide.
Well, the right to have your own mind.
The right to have your own mind, decide
your own thoughts.
Whether you want to drink Coke or Pepsi. I can decide. I can make that decision if I want to purchase Coke or Pepsi or boycott both. No one is going to attack me or penalize me. But if I decide not to do business with an Israeli company, then you are penalized. I mean, imagine the audacity in this whole action, right? In this whole action, when we are in a mess. We are in a mess. Ladies and gentlemen, this country is going through a crazy mess where we've had government employees, federal employees, without pay for 3 weeks. And they're back to work for about 3 weeks. And then we have a president who's threatening to shut down the government again in a couple of weeks if we don't reach an agreement on this crazy wall idea between us and Mexico. And Congress, or the Senate, I should say, they have one main issue. And the main issue is to penalize individuals and companies who don't want to do business with a country engaged in apartheid, engaged in ethnic cleansing, engaged in human rights violations.
Right. And so here's the thing, Jamal. The Senate cannot get itself together to pass laws that are relevant to taking care of its own citizens. The U.S. Senate cannot get it together to help people come back to work after a month-long shutdown. It cannot get its act together to act in the strategic interests of the United States, yet it seeks to act during this time when there's so much suffering on behalf of the perceived strategic interests of another country, which is truly extraordinary in many ways that this bill actually passed 70 plus to 19. We should break it down a little bit. And I think our listeners will remember, Jamal, that in Texas, we told the story of this speech therapist in Texas who was up to have her contract renewed as a speech therapist and a provider within one of the Texas school districts. And as she was signing her contract, she noticed a clause in her employment contract
That's right.
for a school district in Texas that said that as an employee of a school district in Texas, she was forbidden from engaging essentially in any BDS activity against Israel.
And she's suing, by the way.
Well, she refused to sign it. Right. We'll get to that. She refused to sign it.
The ACLU has taken
that case.
Right.
She refused to sign it. She's currently unemployed, and the ACLU is currently engaged in a lawsuit against this school district in Texas. So we're living in it, and it seems to me, Jamal, it's like a bizarro world with so many domestic problems and so many domestic issues having to do with the integrity of how this country is doing and how the citizens of this country do. And we live in a country where we can boycott GM if we want to.
Jess,
we can boycott Ford if we want to. We can boycott any U.S. company. But as American citizens, we are going to be forbidden from boycotting an Israeli company. That's where we're at.
I mean, boycotts have played an essential role in American politics from the country's founding to the present day. You know, so just think about it. Not just in the Constitution, but boycotts. You know, the American revolutionaries forged a national identity by boycotting British and loyalist goods.
Well, that was the Boston Tea Party.
So let's take it way back. Even before the abolitionists organized boycotts of domestic and international companies that participated in the slave trade and supported slavery in the United States. We've boycotted apartheid South Africa. We boycott companies and organizations that are engaged in human trafficking. We boycott companies, including U.S. companies, and have campaigns against U.S. companies who employ child labor in Southeast Asia, you know, and put pressure on them to change their policies. Right?
Well, and
so boycotts is an essential part of American democracy and part of our Constitution. And now you have the Senate, basically, or you have senators, I would say, within the Senate, shredding this part of the Constitution, shredding the First Amendment to make an exception for Israel.
Well, you know, Jamal, we have called this the Israel exception, obviously, that the U.S. senators and to some extent a lot of congressmen are beholden to Israeli interests over U.S. strategic interests, are beholden to AIPAC interests over the interests of their own citizens. And so one way to look at this in terms of the noose that AIPAC has over political discourse in the Senate is that we could frame it as something that is deeply problematic. But on the other hand, previous pro-Israel AIPAC bills in the Senate have passed 100 to 0, and 99 to 1. So I think for the moment, we should do an interesting analysis looking at the fact that it appears that 19 senators were willing to vote against this pro-AIPAC, a pro-Israel, assault on the U.S. Constitution. I believe, even though this is a horrific bill, it's an unconstitutional bill. It's unlikely that it will get through the U.S. Supreme Court. However, it does speak to the changing political dynamics that exist in this country now, that there are 19 senators that could actually vote against a pro-Israel bill.
Well, the silver lining also, none of the candidates or declared candidates or non-candidates who are going to be running for president have voted.
You mean Democratic?
On the Democratic side, have support. They didn't support this bill. From Harris to other potential presidential candidates. They actually didn't vote against it, but they refrained from voting, so they abstained.
An abstention, in my mind, is it's pretty spineless to abstain on this. But what again, and I do agree with you, the silver lining in all of this is that, and we spoke about this last week, Jamal, and I think this really gets to it. The political landscape for this country, for the Democratic Party, is changing more rapidly than the Democrats themselves, in terms of the elite, are able to handle. We know, for example, that over 70% of people who identify as Democrats support, Palestinians and Palestinian self-determination in terms of what's happening in Palestine right now over Israeli interests. That's really dramatic. So if you're going to be a Democratic candidate for the presidency and you were to vote for this bill, your progressive bona fides would be completely shot out of the water. And I'm going to come back to that a little bit later in talking about Kamala Harris. But for the time being, it seems like the shift and the change in the stranglehold that AIPAC and Israeli strategic interests have had in this political discourse, I see, Jamal, a little shift here, don't you?
Well, yeah, I see the shift in general amongst the public. I'm not as optimistic as far as within Congress. The numbers still, when you have over 70 vote against the Constitution, it makes me question their qualifications. Really.
No,
it makes me think what you are putting a foreign country's interest ahead of the U.S. Constitution. And how dare you be in those chambers? How dare you take this vote on behalf of a foreign country against American interests? I don't care if it's our relationship with Israel or our relationship with the UK
with
Russia or wherever. American interest and the Constitution comes first, but apparently it's not.
Well, Jamal, I guess that's the thing that really irks me. We're able to be very critical, for example, about the fact that some of the Trump campaign were serving Russian interests over American interests. And we have, an entire, the Russia investigation. We have congressmen, senators who are just cannot believe for a fact that people would support another country over the U.S. in terms of the way the campaign unfolded. Yet, and that they can do that when it comes to Russia. Yet, with something like pro-Israel interests completely being in contradistinction to U.S. interests, you see senators falling all over themselves to vote in favor of this bill. Do you know the number of the bill, Jamal? Do you happen to know the number? Senate bill. What number? Do you happen to know?
I can look it up.
I'll tell you. It's Senate Bill 1.
For the year.
For the year. Well, what does that tell you? This is January.
This is our priority.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Not the wall, not the jobs for 800,000 federal employees. Not the economy, not
national security.
Not national security. Or global warming, which Trump says doesn't exist
because it's so cold.
It's so cold, so we don't have
we can't have global warming. Well, that's my point, Jamal. It's just like it's Senate Bill 1. The Senate has been called to order for almost a month now. And in terms of the business of the Senate in terms of its independence from the executive branch and being able to carry on the business of this country, could not get it together to do anything else but to put a bill on the floor saying that it would be illegal to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel, and that states should have the authority to do that. Come on, senators, what's going on? Come on. I mean, really?
You're listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM. We also welcome our viewers on Facebook Live. I'm seeing viewers from Kosovo, from Australia, from the UK, from New York City, and others. Welcome all, and we're happy to have you. I want to actually shift gears a little bit. We'll come back to it.
Because I do want to say more about that
because
later.
I want to link it also because this is something related again. So, of course, we are also appreciative this year that there was a change because you're talking about changes. And in the midterm elections, we've seen a shift. Which people term as the blue wave. I call it more like the pink wave. We've had more women elected in Congress,
right?
More progressive congresswomen and congressmen from all over. So there has been a shift. And of course, on the Middle East and other issues, you have Rashida Tlaib
from Michigan, my home state,
and Ilham Omar from Minnesota.
Yes.
And then, and of course, we have young senators and wherever. So Rashida Tlaib, she's been making waves, as usual.
But come on, Jamal, really? I mean, she hasn't been making waves.
Well,
she's doing her job.
She's doing her job.
So why is it making waves that she's doing her job?
And the first one, we know her answer to Trump, and all of a sudden this became basically a big story. But now she's saying, and this is something new, and as you know, every single senator and congressman or congressperson, every year they get invited on this junket to go to Israel by AIPAC.
But it's not really an invitation, Jamal. It's obligatory.
Well, it's
an obligation.
Yeah, and they go.
And
no one says anything. And then so Rashida Tlaib says, well, she'd like to put a congressional delegation to take them to the West Bank and teach them or have them see, in their own eyes, how Palestinians are doing under occupation, or even go to Ramallah and meet with some Palestinian officials, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of her items on her agenda.
Okay, but let's also put that in context. These trips to understand what's happening internationally, Jamal, occur hundreds of times a year. Congressmen and senators take these trips, and I'm not making this up, at various times, almost on a weekly basis. You have various trips by Congress people and senators all the time going to different parts of the world, and it's never a big deal. It's never a big deal. In fact, it's part of your job. If you're involved if you're doing your job as a congressperson and you want to see what's happening strategically, militarily, with respect to national security, you take these trips. South America, Central America, Africa, Asia, wherever, the Middle East. This is not breaking news.
So she announced this, and it was welcomed by many people, but now comes House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Eliot Engel.
Eliot Engel, who's that?
From New York. He's the Democratic representative from New York.
Right.
He criticized Rashida Tlaib, and he's pushing back on.
Do you hear what he
on
said
her
to
trip
her?
to? And she's a freshman, by the way. So he's asked. He said, what did he say?
I want to see. It was so insulting what he said. I hope you have the quote.
I'll come to it.
Because he insulted Rashida Tlaib.
I have her quote. So what he said, instead of her talking about things, she's new here, she ought to listen and learn and open her mind and then come to some conclusions. If you're going to be closed-minded and have your views, no one's going to change her views. Blah, blah, blah.
So
the bottom line, he is basically throwing a monkey's wrench in front of her. God forbid that she takes a congressional delegation
to Palestine.
You know, he's been and through AIPAC taking it's not even taking it to Israel. You're right. It's an annual pilgrimage. And you can't
say no. I mean, you won't get reelected in the past.
Some of her, her statements when she said, I want us to see that segregation and how that has really harmed us being able to achieve real peace in that region. So basically she's saying, come see the apartheid with your own eyes before you make judgment. She also said, I don't think AIPAC provides a real fair lens into the issue, which is true. We know that. Everyone knows that. They basically whitewash Israeli crimes, take them to Tel Aviv, take them here, take them there, avoid all the areas where Palestinians are oppressed and discriminated against. So she wants to bring balance to Congress, and this guy is basically going crazy. He's trying to do everything possible to prevent her. So just let me just finish a little bit. So I was digging around just a little bit, and I posted it on my Facebook page for those of you who are interested. And aside from his voting record, Jess, which we know, I usually go to this website and try to look, because it's public record, who receives what as far as politicians. And guess what? His highest donors for the year 2017, 2018.
Who are they?
It's from pro-Israel. It's from the pro-Israel lobby. It's right there. He received 150 plus thousand.
Wow.
Second to that is financial institutions. So
really?
Yeah. So second to that, but the number one, which is in a public record, who butters his bread, is the Israeli lobby.
Well,
so I don't have to guess where he's going with his statement.
And so Jamal, I have a question for you. Well, let's break down the racist, sexist comment that Congressman Engel made, telling a woman who was just elected by her constituents to basically shut up and listen.
It's called mansplaining.
I think it's worse than
Congress.
I think it's so unbelievable that this guy, who appears to be representing Israeli interests over U.S. interests, would have the audacity to say...
Well, not appears to. To me, when this is your focus, when you focus on your pilgrimage to Israel, when every year you go to AIPAC and every year he goes and pledges basically loyalty.
Fidelity to Israel.
And now you don't want to bring balance. You don't want to educate the American public. You don't want to educate congressmen and congresswomen about the situation on the ground.
Well,
I question this.
Well, I have breaking...
When you vote for a bill, which I'm sure he supports, he's in Congress,
right,
to censor and prevent Americans from making a choice. I question this.
Well, I have breaking news for Congressman Engel. He can't do anything to stop Rashida Tlaib from taking a trip. Her obligation and her right to take this trip to go wherever she wants to understand better what's happening with U.S. policy and U.S. foreign policy. Nothing can stop her from taking this trip. So, Congressman Engel, your attempt to call the police, apparently Congressman Engel wanted to call the police on Rashida Tlaib and some of her constituents. I guess too many Arabs, too many Muslims.
I didn't hear about this, actually.
Yeah.
Why did he want to do that?
I guess he got nervous, as we say in Arabic. He got a little nervous with all this kind of this kind of energy towards justice. But I have a question for you, Jamal. Tell me your experience anytime you've told a strong Palestinian woman to shut up and listen. How do you think that goes over?
He's messing with the wrong woman. He's messing. But
It usually doesn't work so well in general to tell women to shut up and listen.
He's been ridiculous, and he's been so transparent. And like again, he received $150,000 in '94.
But he
exact
he represents pro-Israel groups, and
from pro-Israel, and then the other ones from the
financial institutions.
Securities and investment groups. He received $146,055 from them. So on this subject, man.
So she's going to take the trip, Jamal. Let's be clear. She's going to take the trip. People will go on the trip. She will see. People will see for their own eyes what's happening with the occupation, with the oppression, with the apartheid practices of the Israelis, that they're using basically U.S. dollars. Or U.S. dollars, foreign aid dollars are being used to occupy, oppress, and create apartheid-like conditions. Other Congresspeople will see this. And this is in line with what we've been speaking about, Jamal, about this general shift away from blind loyalty to a foreign interests.
It doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make your day, Jess.
Okay.
Now moving to Lee Zeldin.
Oh, my
God.
Or
Representative Lee Zeldin.
Oh, my God.
And I'm talking about a tweet he just, yesterday, I guess, he tweeted. And it was also on C-SPAN. I mean, the things that happen, if you talk about any other group, meaning if the other group is not Arab or is not Palestinian or is not Muslim or is not African American, people will be foaming, right?
Right.
On the mouth, because these things, it makes your head spin. So he tweeted, and this was his tweet, I'm not making this up, was just selected as ranking member of the House Foreign Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations, ? This is how it started. Just learned freshman Representative Ilhan Omar was also put on this committee.
Yeah, with Rashida.
With oversight of U.S. foreign policy. Crazy to watch what House Dems are empowering, elevating.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, he feels a sense of ownership. I don't know if it's the white man's club or the Republican club or whatever. The fact that now he's going to sit in the same committee, with
women.
With not women, but in the case of Ilhan Omar, she's a woman of color and she wears the hijab.
Oh, no.
And she's Muslim.
He's very nervous.
So
very nervous.
I mean, so obviously racist to put such a thing. This guy is a representative. Lee Zeldin.
Well, I think, Jamal, keeping in line with...
So the Islamophobic dog whistles continue.
Yeah, these are dog whistles.
These are dog whistles.
Yeah.
They continue. And I liked her answer, though. Ilhan Omar, she's quick.
What did she say?
Answered. She said, don't mind him. He's just waking up to the reality of having Muslim women as colleagues who know how to stand up to bullies.
I love it.
It's going to be fun watching him lose his marbles. So, I mean...
That's brilliant.
Why watch TV, ladies and gentlemen? Just watch brilliant. Congress. It's more entertaining these days to watch these congressmen mostly.
It's men.
Men.
It's not... Because congresswomen...
And mostly Republicans going crazy because now they're seeing too many women, according to them, and too many women of color and other ethnicities on the floor.
Well, you're listening to Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. We're streaming to kpoo.com. We're streaming live, by the way, on Facebook at Jamal Dajani 2. So you can listen to us streaming and watch us on Facebook Live. And we'll be posting the show later on YouTube Live and Facebook. So, Jamal, this is part of, this is part of this emerging anxiety among men in Congress, among white men in Congress, and especially among congressmen who have made their living out of getting money from AIPAC. I mean, basically, these guys primarily have guaranteed their ability to get reelected year after year after year because of their pledge of support to AIPAC and pro-Israel lobby groups. And in fact, to be fair, Jamal, it's not just the Republicans. I mean, in all fairness, this is true for many Democrats too. In fact, the Democrats are so fearful of this emerging kind of progressive element within the Democratic platform. You now have a new committee, like a super PAC. Maybe not it's super, but it's a PAC. It's a political action committee. And basically, it's a new group called basically Democrats for Israel. They're so frightened that Congress will start to pay attention to what the Israelis are doing in terms of their gross human rights violations, and that the United States is supporting this apartheid state. They're so nervous about the Democratic Party moving in the direction of justice for Palestine, they're starting to form their own groups. In fact, that's why I believe Howard Schultz is no longer a Democrat. He's afraid of the progressive side of the Democratic Party. That's why Mike Bloomberg also, kinds of stays away from the the platform of the Democratic Party. Same reason. These guys, these billionaire independent club, they want to be able to support Israel, but pretend to be progressive at the same time. I have breaking news for them.
What?
You can't be progressive and ignore Palestine. You can't be progressive and ignore apartheid, Israeli apartheid. You can't be progressive and not let Americans make up their own mind about whether or not they want to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel.
You're absolutely right. You're listening to Arab Talk again on KPO San Francisco 89.5 FM. I want to also welcome our viewers on Facebook Live, and we've added a few more from Jordan and other places I've listed earlier. So
can I just go back for a minute on this topic?
I want to, because you're talking about this topic.
Yeah.
You talk about human rights violations.
Yeah.
We've talked about Rashida Tlaib taking congressmen or a congressional delegation to see things in her own, in their own eyes, and basically make up their own minds. And we in the past we've discussed the issue with Airbnb.
Oh, yeah.
And Israel's still continuing.
This is a good story, Jamal.
So there is another story which is very similar, which is actually Amnesty International.
Yeah, it's a big story.
Started to talk about this. One is, as you know, now the other big travel company, TripAdvisor, right? So TripAdvisor has been listing properties in the in settlements, colonial settlements, 70 different properties, basically in illegal Israeli colonial settlements. And then so recently they've been advertising, and they're I mean,
it's crazy, man.
It's crazy. I mean, we laugh, but we shouldn't be laughing at this. So one of their newest ads, and this is what they're advertising. They're advertising for you, the traveler, the international travel, to enjoy the Bedouin experience. This is how.
That's the way they're saying it?
This is, yeah.
It sounds like
travel to the West Bank to enjoy the Bedouin experience. And I'm not making this up.
So freaky, man.
On land, basically on settlements where Bedouins were ethnically cleansed.
Unbelievable.
This
That's on TripAdvisor?
This is the area and other areas where the Israeli occupation army has pushed away those Bedouins, and they've been trying to also take over their villages in Khan al-Ahmar and other places. So they've been advertising. That's why this caught the attention of Amnesty International, basically telling you to have an unforgettable experience.
So, Jamal, that's like...
by going and staying in an Israeli settlement.
But that's like saying, go to South Africa and see the marvelous experience of black South Africans under apartheid. Go to Soweto, go to the Bantustans of South Africa and catch a glimpse of what it was like to live in apartheid South Africa, or go to a back in the, I shouldn't say back in the day, but during the time of active slavery, staying at the master's house to get a glimpse of the days of slavery. I mean, this is truly outrageous that the Israelis get a pass on marketing and branding themselves to travel on and stay in stolen Palestinian land in illegal settlements. But Amnesty's not going to have any part of this, obviously.
Amnesty International actually is taking action. They have posted a petition on their website, so I urge people to go to their website. And they've been tweeting about it. And again, this is not a joke.
It seems like a joke. It seems like
TripAdvisor wants you to have a Bedouin experience on land ethnically cleansed from Bedouins by Israel. That's the message. So you can book it. I'm not, you can go on there. People can book a place on an Israeli settlement now through. So we're done with Airbnb, and Airbnb made the right decision by stopping making reservations on Israeli settlements, but now TripAdvisor
we have
moved
to come
into
after
that void.
Yeah, we have to come hard on TripAdvisor for doing this. I mean, it's truly amazing. And I know you didn't quite believe this when I've said this the last couple of weeks, and we have every reason to be skeptical, Jamal, because we've been doing this for a long time. But with all of this, it does seem like there's some shifting going on within the American electorate in terms of their eyes opening up to the international atrocities against people of Palestine in Palestine right now. It just seems like the tide is beginning to shift. Having said that, though, I'm sorry, because you know where I'm going with this. Mm-hmm. We have to call out, Kamala Harris, for example, who is the darling now of the progressive left, right? I think Kamala Harris is an amazing human being, don't get me wrong, and I think she should run. I think she'll do really well. She's brilliant, she's smart, but we need to look at her policies very, very carefully and not just be quick to say she is as progressive as, the most progressive. In fact, as a prosecutor in 2010, she wasn't that progressive. She was going against, for example, attempts to release police videos of basically bad police behavior against, people of color, African Americans, and other communities disadvantaged. She was against that open transparency that we now have when she was a prosecutor. So her prosecutorial record is not unblemished. More importantly, Jamal, last year we reported that Kamala Harris went to AIPAC but didn't want anybody to know about it. So she went through the side door.
That's right.
She didn't want progressive people to see that she was going to AIPAC, but her speech to AIPAC was leaked recently, and we've seen a copy of it and read it. It is atrocious, talking about how Israel has made the desert bloom. This is from Kamala Harris, how she has been planting trees in Israel on stolen Palestinian land. She didn't put that part. That's my addition. For many decades, and how supporting Israel is a key strategic interest. And it was the same nauseating supplication to Israel that we see from most U.S. senators and congresspeople. But she doesn't want us to see that. So my feeling, Kamala, and I know you listen to Arab Talk, if you really say you are as progressive as you say you are, when are you going to come clean on the question of Palestine? That's my question to Kamala Harris.
On the side of justice, basically, not just the question of Palestine. You can't have this progressive, because that's how she markets herself as, or as we call them, PEPs. Progressive except on Palestine. So of course, if I mean, I don't know how this will play. Now it looks like Kamala Harris is leading the race until others kind of join.
No, she's.
But if she becomes a nominee, then the question is, with everything else she has done, do you vote for her or do you vote for Donald Trump?
Well, you don't vote for Donald Trump. I
mean, this is in a way.
No, I don't think that
she should be questioned.
No,
but also she should be supported because there are other good things.
Absolutely,
that she has done.
No, but my point is, it's her deceptiveness. It's the fact that she goes.
But she didn't vote for the bill.
She voted for the first one, Jamal.
The first one, but people have time to change. She actually was one of the senators who abstained.
Okay.
And so she doesn't go on the record that she voted for this anti-BDS bill.
So I'm just calling out to Kamala Harris and people who think her record is unblemished when it comes to progressive issues. We need to take a careful look at it, of course, as we should with any candidate. But if you're claiming to be progressive and you're claiming to be on the side of justice, you believe in health care for all, you believe in, criminal justice reform, for you to go through the back door of AIPAC and give this glowing speech in support of apartheid, you need to be pressured on that. You need to come clean on that. You need to not deceive your electorate, the people that elected you to go there. You're either proud to support an apartheid country and get money from AIPAC, or you're not. It's not that complicated.
No, and people will change, so hopefully she will. And this is kind of a segue to something really good that happened recently.
What's that, Jamal?
And even though it has been a process in the making, and we have, as you know, you and I have many friends from Jewish Voice for Peace, and we've had representatives on this show, who support Palestine and stand against Israel and its human rights violations. So after years of study and discussion, and this is an internal thing going on within the organization Jewish Voice for Peace, Jewish Voice for Peace, put a statement rejecting Zionism, just officially.
Wow.
So this is part of their statement. We unequivocally oppose Zionism because it is counter to our vision of justice, equality, and freedom for all people. And this was from a statement entitled Our Approach to Zionism by Jewish Voice for Peace. So for 22 years since its founding, Jewish Voice for Peace declined to take a position on Zionism. They've been shifting little by little, not wanting to cut itself off from virtually all the American Jewish community. And as you know, they come under attack by AIPAC, ADL, other organizations, even local organizations. But the tide has been shifting since 2014.
Well, Jamal, I think that's very impressive. I want to put a little historical note on that because many, many years ago when JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace, was just starting, you and I, had been invited to speak with them and kind of talk a little bit about their political analysis. And they had always been approaching the Palestinian community and wanting to kind of coordinate political efforts and things like that. And for many, many years, we had been encouraging them to come clean on this issue of Zionism.
That's right. And then some of them made that choice individually, but now the big news as an organization,
it's a big deal.
I'll read you more from their statement, and this is when JVP, or Jewish Voice for Peace, also emphasized that Zionism is harmful to Jews, not only to Palestinians. So part of their statement, they say, many of us have learned from Zionism to treat our neighbors with suspicion, to forget the ways Jews built home and community whenever we found ourselves to be. Jewish people have had long and integrated histories in the Arab world and North Africa, living among and sharing community, language, and custom with Muslims and Christians for thousands of years. By creating a racist hierarchy with European Jews at the top, Zionism erased those histories and destroyed those communities and relationships. In Israel, Jewish people of color from the Arab world, North Africa and East Africa, have long been subjected to systematic discrimination and violence by the Israeli government. That hierarchy prevents us from seeing each other, fellow Jews and other fellow human beings, in our full humanity.
Bravo for Jewish Voice for Peace. Bravo.
So this is
That's impressive.
an amazing statement.
Yeah.
Again, after years of study and discussion, Jewish Voice for Peace has officially rejected Zionism and published a long statement. I urge people, they can read it. We've read some excerpts. It has been something going through transformation since their founding 22 years ago. But the movement to this direction began in 2014, and now we're in the year 2019, beginning of 2019.
Very impressive.
They've made that decision. Of course, we stand with them.
Of course.
They have stood with us.
We stand with them.
And I know they're coming under heavy attack and criticism. And it was hard because, at the end of the day, you are speaking against members of your community.
Right.
You're basically separating ideologically and from a humanitarian perspective.
But at the same time, it not only does it take a lot of courage for them to do it, they are clearly placing themselves as an organization committed to justice. It's kind of interesting, Jamal, because it's a trajectory for many progressive organizations it's part of this discussion, as you said, that we've been having. JVP is no longer PEP. They're legitimately progressive, that they have come out and spoken with such clarity about a racist ideology. They need to be given a lot of credit for that.
And support.
Now, in the remaining time, Jamal, we have to speak a little bit about Palestine because there have been two dramatic developments. A 16-year-old girl was brutally assassinated and murdered by settlers yet again, in the occupied West Bank. And secondly, there's been a resignation by the Prime Minister Hamdallah, because today actually is the day when all of the funding that the U.S. had to support the Palestinian security, apparatuses and other support stops today. So there's a lot of big changes.
Well, three things I want to add.
Okay.
Two Palestinians were assassinated, and these are the ones who are focusing more, got killed by the Israeli occupation. One, of course, recently, the case of the young mother who was killed by Israeli colonial settlers,
Right.
basically throwing a rock at her car and killing her.
Right.
And now they have been identified. And I know that they're going to receive a slap on the wrist. In fact, the media identifies them as teenagers. They don't say that they are living in a settlement. I identify them as terrorists. So they are basically settler terrorists who killed an innocent Palestinian woman. The other one is a 16-year-old schoolgirl.
Unbelievable.
And so the Israeli media and other media outlets, they're trying to say that she tried to stab a soldier, and then they show you a picture of the same knife, like as
It's
if
the same knife.
Palestinians buy knives from the same manufacturer.
It's the same knife.
I've seen the same knife later on.
The last 10 years.
And eyewitnesses will tell you, after they shot her, which, by the way, she wasn't killed instantly, they prevented ambulances and people from helping her. So she bled
To death. That's right.
16-year-old schoolgirl. And what they found in her bag
dangerous
were
things.
pencils, notebooks, and books.
That's it.
This is from eyewitnesses. And, of course, the Israeli media is spinning it that she came to stab. Even if she came to stab, which I don't believe it for a minute. And seeing the picture of the knife. So she's so frail, you could push her with your hand, Jess, or with the, what they call the butt of a gun, and you don't have to shoot her and let her bleed to death. So these are two horrific stories, and we can cite many others. And it was really atrocious.
It's really a tragedy.
A tragedy. 16-year-old schoolgirl carrying her school bag to seeing her on
Bleed to
camera, bleed to death.
Bleed
They
to
won't
death.
allow even an ambulance to come near her or Palestinian medics. Now, talking about what's going on within, because we have a few minutes left, the Palestinian government has officially resigned. And the entire, so it's not just the Prime Minister Hamdallah, who I know personally. The entire government resigned, submitted its resignation to Mahmoud Abbas to make a decision now later on to assign or nominate a new prime minister, or we don't know. He might keep Hamdallah.
I don't think
but
so.
But all indications, because Fatah is putting a lot of pressure on Mahmoud Abbas to bring someone from its ranks. Some say it might be Muhammad Shtayeh, that's one of the names that keep popping up, to form a new government. There are many issues from the Social Security Act to the stagnation in the peace to basically they don't have any money. And you're right, the U.S. government under Trump has cut funding. They've cut, and there is a misconception in the media, and I'll talk about it quickly. They've cut funding from the Palestinians, everything except for $60 million. They kept them for security.
Right.
And we know this is for the security apparatus, really, to protect the settlers and for the coordination. Right? So why the Palestinian government, they've sent a letter. Why did they send a letter to the State Department telling them, you know what, keep the $60 million,
Right.
even though we are suffering financially. Do you know why?
Why?
Well, guess what? Because we're talking about the Congress, which works, the Congress and its surrogates and its members who work on behalf of Israel most of the time, as we've seen with the BDS bill and others, they have decided to allow a law basically permitting victims of terror throughout the years, so-called terror, to sue any country or entity that receives money from the U.S.
So it's a way for them to sue the Palestinians.
So basically, so basically now you're going to have millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of lawsuits targeting the Palestinian Authority, because even if it receives $1 from the U.S. government, they're subject to lawsuit. So they said, thanks, but no thanks, we don't want your money. And guess what? Guess who has been lobbying like crazy to change that law?
I don't know. Could it be Jared Kushner?
AIPAC, probably Jared Kushner, through instructions from Bibi Netanyahu. They're begging them, saying, no.
Give them the money.
Give them the money.
So
don't
we
put
can
that
sue-
law.
so we can
Because
sue
if
the-
you don't give them the money, then they won't have security, and we'll have to deal with the security, and they're doing our job
right.
for us. So
We'll have to come back.
this is the update, but most likely a viewer and actually a friend, Rami from Australia. I don't know if you're listening and he's watching the show. He's saying that Mohammed Shtayeh has been assigned as Prime Minister. I haven't read that. I know that his name is there, so I don't know if it has been official, but we will find out if they've had basically or he has been tasked already to form a new government.
Hey, Jamal, that's all we got for today. We want to thank you for joining us today on Arab Talk. Check us out on our website, arabtalkradio.com. Check us out on Facebook, Jamal Dajani 2, Twitter, our website.
Our website, arabtalkradio.com. You'll find us on iTunes. You'll find us on SoundCloud.
And we'll see you guys next week. Send us your comments to arabtalk@kpoo.com. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.